I have something really exciting going on in one of my tanks, but I didn't want this to just be an update video, so this is going to be how to keep detritivores like cherry shrimp alive when you also have predators like cichlids and other fish inside of the same tank. And then I'll share the cool thing at the end. So if you've been watching my channel for a while now, you know that I am very pro detritivore. I keep snails, scuds, and shrimp in all of my planted tanks. Most people are not really concerned with the livelihood of scuds. They either view them as a live food source or a pest. So for this video, we're going to ignore scuds and primarily focus on cherry shrimp. If you're trying to raise a colony of shrimp, I strongly suggest doing this in their own tank with no predation so you can just have a shrimp-only tank. However, I love the idea of these naturalistic, planted, self-sustaining aquariums that incorporate multiple levels of the food chain. So for this video, we're going to be working under the premise that we must have cherry shrimp and we must have fish coexist in the same tank. In order to keep cherry shrimp alive, we need to focus on these two major areas. The first one is hiding spaces, and the other one is the body shape and size of the fish you're planning on keeping with cherry shrimp. We can sum that up to fish morphology. I'm going to give a brief introduction to these two topics and then show how I balance them in my two tanks that both have cichlids in them. Now remember, the goal is to have a self-sustaining population or a colony of cherry shrimp with the fish in the tank, and we are going to expect some of these cherry shrimp to die. But our goal is to make sure that through hiding spaces and considering the body morphology of the fish, that we can keep a population of cherry shrimp going perpetually. Simply put, most people do not have adequate amount of hiding spaces in their aquarium. My tanks all look like a maze of driftwood, sticks, rocks, and plants. Basically, there has to be enough stuff for all of these small critters to find nooks and crannies to live in that other fish are not small enough to infiltrate inside of and find them. Additionally, in my 55-gallon tank, you can see I have a carpet of dwarf Sagittaria that really acts as another ecosystem for the shrimp to live underneath and the fish stay above it because they can't really pick through the dense lawn that I have. I also have spaces behind my glass where the rocks are up against the glass and there's this narrow cavity of space that the shrimp can access and fish cannot access. If you see how densely planted and how much hardscape I have inside of this 55-gallon tank, you can see that there's a lot of opportunities to create safe havens or refuges for the cherry shrimp, and they can escape predation from my larger angelfish, which are cichlids. When I'm feeding my tank, I also make sure to overfeed my tank because I want the fish flakes to go behind the rocks, underneath the leaves, within the rocks and the sticks, behind the rocks that are pushed up against the glass, because I want the flakes to go where my detritivores are. I'm not just feeding my fish. By having enough hiding spaces, I'm guaranteeing that some of my shrimp are going to reach sexual maturity at adulthood and be able to procreate and produce more new baby shrimplets, and those will have a chance to grow up and reach adulthood as well. I need there to be a cycle of reproduction. Because I know that my angelfish are eating some of my cherry shrimp. I'm not trying to have a 100% survival rate. I do need some cherry shrimp as a live food source for my fish to have that self-sustaining idea behind it. However, I need to make sure that some of my cherry shrimp, most of my cherry shrimp, are reproducing and making it to adulthood. In my 20-gallon long aquarium, I have Apistogramma cichlids, and you will see a similar density in hardscaping. The entire tank floor is covered with interlocking pieces of mopani and spiderwood. I have a few rocks in there, and it is covered in plants like anubias and java moss and java fern, growing all on top of the driftwood. This creates a habitat that is rich in hiding spaces. But wait, there is a single, unignorable factor between my two tanks that create the fundamental difference in their ability to keep cherry shrimp alive. The body shape and size of the fish I am keeping with them. Fish morphology. If you look at my angelfish right over there, they have pointed heads, elongated tall bodies, and fins. It's difficult for them to fit into tight spaces. They're designed to swim amongst tall plants and pick in between leaves and at the surface of the aquarium with their mouths. Because of their body shape and size, they're not really the best at digging in substrate or navigating between rocks or tightly packed driftwood. And this was done intentionally. I did not want my angelfish to be able to infiltrate this little safe haven I've made for my cherry shrimp with rocks and driftwood and anubias. Say hello to Rowan. But my Apistogramma cichlids, they will absolutely eat my cherry shrimp. Zero chance of my cherry shrimp staying alive. The Apistos will absolutely find. Or what is he doing? My Apistogramma will absolutely find the cherry shrimp. Why? Because of their body shape. Their body shape is much more slender, more oval, torpedo shaped. They're going to be able to fit inside of these nooks and crannies that I'm creating as hiding spaces for my cherry shrimp. Remember, Apistogramma are dwarf cichlids. They're one of the smallest cichlids that we can keep in captivity. Apistogramma borellii is one of the smallest, I think, but the ones I have are Apistogramma cockatoides. Apistogramma cockatoides are tiny and they could weave in and out of the driftwood through the plants. They're really good at digging and they constantly move the substrate in my 20-gallon long. And like I said, there is zero chance of any cherry shrimp staying alive. In that tank, I did have cherry shrimp and scuds at one point, and I haven't seen any in over a year. It's because they've all been eaten by my Apistogramma cichlids. And like I've tried, I got an Apistogramma cichlids when they were fry, very tiny little babies. And they've grown up alongside many cherry shrimp, and some of the cherry shrimp are much larger than the Apistos. Shrimp, scuds, all these kind of crustacean type things, they're the natural food source of many Apistogrammas in the wild, so it makes sense that they're going to target them. If you have a tank with small, peaceful community fish, maybe like chili rasboras, maybe white cloud mountain minnows, maybe neon tetras, but probably ember tetras would be a better choice. These are all relatively small fish. You probably will have a higher likelihood of your cherry shrimp surviving with these small, peaceful, docile community fish. So Apistogramma and angelfish are two types of cichlids, but I have way more success with the bigger and badder angelfish in my 55-gallon than I do with the very, very small Apistogramma in my 20-gallon long. Even though Apistos are cichlids just like angelfish, the morphology of an Apistogramma means they're able to hunt cherry shrimp better. I would also lump rams like the Bolivian ram and German blue ram in the same category as Apistogrammas as not really shrimp safe. Now, these are just my own personal examples that I'm using to illustrate a larger point about how fish morphology and adequate hiding spaces increases the survivability of cherry shrimp when kept in a tank with fish. I am not saying that angelfish are going to be the most shrimp safe fish or that angelfish are shrimp safe in the first place. And I'm also not saying that Apistogramma are inherently going to kill your cherry shrimp. I believe that keeping any cichlids with shrimp is going to be a challenge. Everyone is going to have their own personal anecdotes and success and failure stories, so just keep that in mind. Now, let me show you the really cool thing I have going on in my 20-gallon tank. My Apistogramma cockatoides have spawned, and the babies have hatched from their eggs, and I have a bunch of fry floating around one of the moms. Now, I am not a self-proclaimed fish breeder. I've had some success with like white cloud mountain minnows, which are egg scatterers. I've woken up to some fish fry that have reached adulthood, but I didn't really do anything. But cichlids are pretty cool to breed, especially Apistogramma. I haven't had my angelfish breed yet, but Apistos and cichlids in general are really good parents. When they mate and spawn, the female usually guards the eggs while the male guards the territory. When the eggs hatch, the mom usually shuffles the baby fry around the aquarium, keeping them safe, attacking any other fish away from its territory. Cichlids in general are pretty good parents. Now, they do take a few tries getting it right. I have seen my cichlids spawn once, but they ate the eggs because they thought that the conditions weren't favorable, which is totally normal. It does take a few tries for the fish to become good parents and figure it out, but in general, compared to some fish like white cloud mountain minnows that have no parental instinct, they just scatter eggs the same way with like neon tetras, cichlids do display a fair amount of parental care for their young. So I'm going to try my best. I'm going to hope that I get some fry that reach adulthood, but it is only their second spawn, so we'll see how it goes. I'm not going to stress too much about having a bunch of fry in the tank. I know the best thing for me to do would be attempt hatching my own baby brine shrimp and feeding them live foods. Unfortunately, I just don't have access to baby brine shrimp eggs and a thing to hatch them in. I've never tried it before, so it might be on the books or something I do in the future. As of right now, I'm just going to feed them 3 to 5 times a day, make sure my water parameters stay pristine. And how I plan on feeding them is crushing up some flake foods and dispersing it in the tank and hoping that they eat. A lot of people might say to remove the male from the tank, but it's a community tank. I have too much going on and I want to see if they can figure it out. So I'm just going to leave the male in the tank. If I get a few that reach adulthood, that'll be really awesome. Maybe I can trade them into my local fish store for some store credit or give them away on Marketplace. But yeah, that's the cool thing I have going on in my aquarium right now. Thank you guys so much for watching my 8th video on YouTube. It's been a really exciting 2025 so far, and I appreciate all the attention my videos have been getting. And I would really appreciate it if you left a comment down below. Let me know if you have any experience breeding cichlids like Apistogrammas, or if you in your own tanks keep cherry shrimp with other fish and have found a nice balance. I've also wanted to experiment doing longer form content. I'm kind of stuck in this rut where I want my videos to be digestible and short. I don't want to be too long, but at the same time, a lot of people say that they like the way that I speak and they want to hear more in longer form videos. So let me know if you guys want longer form content. I'll give it a shot. I have a few ideas, kind of like vlog style videos about aquariums, but for right now, I'm really in the niche of making it educational and accessible and simple to understand. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.